Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. The meeting will be starting shortly. While we wait, let's learn more about Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
June Conservation Commission meeting. We'll start with an introduction, so maybe we can start down with Valerie on the end, and we'll swing around this way.
My name is Valerie Fanger.
Connor Madison.
Andrew Koff, I'm the chair of the Conservation Commission.
Kyle Welch.
Trevor Matera.
Dave Short.
Kristen Murphy, Conservation and Sustainability Planner.
Okay. I know we have a few applicants who are here. We'll get to those in a minute. Is there anyone here for public comment besides the action items? Okay. Seeing none, why don't we do our first item, which is election of officers, and then we'll get right into the Eversource project, because we deferred this last month, so we're due. Any discussion or motions want to be made regarding officers for this commission of ours? Typically we have a chair, vice chair, and a treasurer. Is anybody interested in taking on more leadership? There's opportunities should anyone decide they would like to.
Keep it simple. I just make a motion to put the same people in the same positions for the coming year. You're not retiring, are you?
Is that something you'd accept? Yeah.
I'm not retiring yet. I'm willing to do one more year, and then there's opportunities for other people. Okay, I said it out loud.
We can train Trevor one more year.
All right.
I second the motion.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks, Trevor.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, so up next we have a wetland conditional use permit application for a proposed utility maintenance work on our existing right-of-ways, transmission lines for Eversource. Who would, from the Eversource team, want to come up and introduce the project, present to the commission on it?
Yes.
I know we've had some discussions in the past about this.
My name's Bill McCloy. I'm from Normandeau Associates. We're working with Eversource. A couple folks here, Matt and Jeremy, on this project. And I can do like a brief overview, discussion of the project. I expect this will be somewhat familiar. I think they've been working on similar projects in the past. So anyway, we filed, I guess this is the Eversource, it's the RASH project. This is maintenance to existing structures within their utility right-of-way in Exeter. The project includes work on their A126 and H141 lines. Those are existing 115 kilovolt lines. The project includes the replacement of 36 structures, sort of mixed between the two lines. The work will include various types of impacts to the Wetland Conservation Overlay District. This includes temporary wetland impacts for crossings and work areas. Several replacement structures are located in wetland areas, and then there'll also be temporary, along with permanent access through some of the wetland buffers that are associated with the wetlands. We're currently working through the NHDS and other permits required for the project. We're anticipating a statutory permit by notification application to be submitted soon with NHDS. We're expecting concurrent Army Corps authorization under General Permit 6, and we've also submitted an alteration of terrain permit for the proposed access roads and work pad disturbance within the town of Exeter. That's it at a high level. I don't know if Matt, you wanted to
Yeah,
add
I mean,
anything?
we have so my name is Matt Carden. I'm the project manager for Eversource for this project. So Bill's our environmental consultant, mostly preparing and doing the environmental surveys and the application. But we have a group of people here to answer any and all questions the best we can from the board.
So this is covering all the transmission line across from the 101 crossing through the town forest over to Raynes Farm and then across the river and into Stratham. Correct?
Yeah,
And
that's correct.
I think previously we've seen other sort of smaller projects, like at the Watson Road lot was done recently, and Raynes Farm was done not that long ago. Are you redoing those, or these are ones that you didn't hit last time?
Yeah,
Are now
so-
being done?
Right, so the line's fairly old, and the way these projects come up is the company will do inspections along the transmission lines every year, every other year. And based off those inspection data that comes back, engineers review it, and then they determine that certain structures have met their serviceable lifespan. And so that's how these structures are then slated for replacement from existing wood or originally built wood structures to a new weathered steel structure. So we get that list, and then with our team, and we'll do constructability walkdowns. And what we'll try to do is package as many of those other wooden structures that maybe didn't make the list into a project as a whole. Try to gain some opportunity from an access road being built, the benefits of having environmental consultants and engineering and all that stuff done under one project. So in the case of, I think it was last year, we had work off of Captain's Way and maybe even off of Watson, and we were in Raynes Farm a few years ago. That was a separate line. Now we're replacing the structures on another line.
Because there's two lines in there, so
Yeah.
you were working on the
Yeah,
other
so there's
one.
the A126 line and the H141 line, which they're two parallel lines that run across the entire right-of-way through the town of Exeter.
Okay,
Yeah, so we're working both lines on this project simultaneously, so projects popped up on both lines, so we're trying to do as much work off of crossroads as we can so we don't have to come back, or at least minimize the amount that we have to come back off of those crossroads in subsequent years.
yeah, it just seems a little crazy that you built roads off Captain's Way, and now you're going back in to do another one. I don't know.
Yeah, it's,
Are you going to be essentially filling in the gaps between the work you've already performed where it hasn't been done yet?
for the most part, I mean, we try to justify doing as much work as we can, but we're held to a standard to what we can replace and what we can justify to replace. So there's the engineering requirement where a structure's been rated to not meet its serviceable life. So that's a reliability concern on our part when we want to replace that. And then there's a justification to be made for the amount of money spent and value added for building a road in those areas. But that doesn't mean that we can do everything in that area, because then we wouldn't be maintaining the transmission line responsibly for ratepayers. So we try to package the projects as best we can and get as much done from a crossroad as much as we can. But there's other factors that prohibit us from doing that in some cases.
Well, like in this instance, will this pretty much finish off the Watson to Captain's section and then the Captain's down to the Squamscott River?
So from the state road, so in Raynes Farm, I believe that'll all be
That'll be finished.
steel. All the wood will be replaced to steel, so we shouldn't have to go back to Raynes Farm for structural replacements any time in the near future.
Yep.
I'd have to double check on what the scope is between Captain's Way to Watson. A lot of it is being done,
Yeah.
and I want to say that it's all being done, but I'd have to double check that and make sure that I'm 100%.
And then you still have from Captain's Way down to Newfields Road, right? That hasn't been touched yet, has it?
We are doing, that'll be part, some of that will be part of this project, but I'm fairly sure that all of it won't be done as part of this project.
Yeah, it looked like part of it was boxed, but not all, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so some of the structures are in there are being done, and, not all of them are being done in those stretches, so.
Anywhere there's adjacent poles, that would be accessed off of one access route. They try to justify doing those when possible, just so that, if they have to go in, they can get adjacent poles on both lines done and get out, and they don't have to get back in there, for the foreseeable future.
It's not clear on the figures, and not that it needs to be, need to do this, but just from my own understanding of this, if your dots where the existing structures are, if you called out a difference in the symbology, you had a relic wooden one versus a new steel one, that would be a better way to communicate this information to communities about what you've already done and what you haven't done.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can take that.
That's a good recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, the existing poles, which have already been replaced, which haven't. I know that the goal would be to reuse access routes, that were used, in previous replacements as much as possible, just, to keep the area where works happened or proposed to happen.
Yeah.
Use that as much as possible.
Drew?
Bill?
Oh.
Question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to be, there are other posts on the Raynes farm that you didn't do the last time you were there? It looked like you had, when you had that, 3 years ago, that you had torn down and put up brand new ones all the way through. There are still some need replacing?
That's the story we're hearing here. We can look and ask, so how many were replaced? I know I've seen those, because the sledding hill, there's these giant, beautiful steel structures at the top of the sledding hill. That I've observed at Raynes Farm, but I haven't seen the wooden ones there.
Yeah, I believe there's one remaining wood structure in that field that we're planning to replace.
Wouldn't it be more efficient to do them all at once, and to all the setup that you had for that and all the mats and whatnot? It just seems tough to...
It makes sense. Unfortunately, these are complicated projects, so it looks like they just have one location to get to in Raynes, which is back towards it's not near the barn or the access road, but you'll access via the parking lot area.
Yeah, we'll do it in similar fashion that we did a couple of years ago, and we've met with the town on that matter. So we'll come in, we have a temporary access agreement coming in through the gravel parking lot, and then once we come off the gravel parking lot, it'll all be timber matted directly into the right-of-way, kind of coming up the existing farm road or trail that the tractor typically uses, it looks like, and then getting to the right-of-way and then shooting down right-of-way to the structure. It'll all be timber matted. And we've coordinated with the person who hays that field, and it sounds like September 15th, I want to say, is when he anticipates haying that field last. And so we'll be... Sure, yeah. So we'll be phasing that particular structure after the last hay. And I know our outreach representative is here, Serena. She's filling in for Caitlin, who's been in our constant discussions with the town. But Caitlin will be coordinating with the person haying that field as we get closer.
So this is supposed to start in August this year? Is that?
Yeah, so we have this phase of the project. So this project extends from Chester all the way to Greenland, and we've kind of sectioned it off. But this phase of the project goes from Fremont to Stratham, and that we have 50 probably more like 85 structures to be replaced in that span of area. And that work will happen starting in sort of middle to end of August, preparing our access roads and work pads. And then our outage to do the work starts in September and goes until December, early December. So that's sort of the time frame when we'll be working. And it's, we'll be working all three of those towns, Fremont, Brentwood, and Exeter, actually 4 towns in Stratham within that time frame.
Like, will it be simultaneous? Like they'll be across the whole length of the lines, or is it going to be like a rolling?
Well, there's a lot of factors in that. There's a lot of sequencing that's going to happen. We have time of year restrictions that have been given to us by Fish and Game. So for a good chunk in the town of Exeter, we actually won't be starting until October 15th. Now that's from, what's that? That's from essentially Route 101 all the way to Captain's Way. That chunk of project can't start until October 15th. But the areas east of Captain's Way through Raynes Farm, that'll happen before October 15th. So that'll be within that potentially in that late August timeframe. But to answer your question, in an ideal world, yeah, it would happen in a nice consecutive order from like east to west or west to east or something like that. But there's so many other factors, landowner concerns, issues.
So, well, I guess one question is there's a pretty popular parking area under the transmission lines on Watson Road. Mm-hmm. Like, is that going to be unavailable for this whole period, or like how will we manage? Like,
no, so we have an access road coming in off of Watson Road, and we're actually replacing the structure right directly adjacent to that parking area. So that'll be part of the work that is scheduled to happen after October 15th. So we can't have equipment in that area until after October 15th. So
you said Fish and Game, it's a threatened and endangered species, the turtles, or?
Yeah, turtles, and it's a recommended time of year restriction. They don't want work. Let's see here. They would. It's for blandings and spotted turtles. They want the work to start after October 15th. Presumably by that point, the turtles have gotten into their deeper water habitat to start hibernating for the winter. So the goal is to minimize impacts to those species.
So you'll go in directly off Watson, you won't be using the parking lot for staging?
We wouldn't necessarily use it for staging, but that is a point of access to the right-of-way. So we're, I don't know if you have the maps there handy for you guys, but there's a structure to the west of the parking lot that we'll be doing.
And to the north, right?
I think it runs east-west.
Well, the right-of-way runs east-west, but
Right.
I thought there's a pole to the north of the parking lot.
This one?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
No, we're kind of directly west of the parking lot off of Watson. And then we're coming to do that one specific structure. And then a point of access to do 3 additional structures will be coming off the right side of that parking lot. So, I mean, we'll be utilizing that area to some extent, and there will be activity coming in and out of the right-of-way where the parking lot is. I mean, the parking lot's in the right-of-way. So, but we don't intend to use it as like a laydown area. Like, we're not gonna have equipment stored there, poles are stored there, or anything like that. We'll, I think in meeting with the town, we've tried to address their concerns and being familiar myself with how heavily that parking lot gets used. We're gonna be, try to keep it open so people can get in there, but at the same time, it's gonna be an active work zone in the areas around it.
So those are poles 159, right?
Let me just get to that
It
section.
looks like
157 to the west, and
Yeah.
then 156, 155, and 154.
Yeah, and those are to the east. Typically, it's a couple days of work to build the access and lay down the mats and do that, and then there'll be a pause between then
Okay, yeah.
and when the structure work starts. And then when the structures are being done, there's a couple days at a time when that happens. So, while the area will be utilized by the project, like Matt was saying, it's not going to be occupied and active, for the entire duration.
Will the part working on the Raynes farm interfere at all with the farmer that pays that field? Or has that been cleared up?
Yeah, we've coordinated with the town and have contact with the farmer there, and the information that we've been provided and coordinated. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had coordinated with the farmer and have a tentative plan to be in there after his last planned hay for the season, which is around September 15th. So we have his contact and plan to coordinate around him. And right now we'll be in there after, essentially directly after he's done his haying.
Okay.
So there's the access concerns that we have about sort of impacting recreational access to our town-owned properties that intersect the right-of-way. But what about also the temporary wetland impacts, like the Watson Road one? Those are some of the temporary wetland impacts.
Yeah, there's a fairly substantial wetland, 3 or 4 spans in off of the Watson Road parking lot. So we aren't planning to cross that. That's sort of a breaking point for us. So that's why we have a separate access coming in off of Captain's Way. It'd be a substantial effort to mat and go through, and obviously it's in our interest to minimize our wetland impacts. So we break the access point there, so we'll be coming in off of Watson Road, 3 spans, and coming out, and then coming in off of Captain's Way. I don't have the span count off the top of my head, but for several spans, but that'll be a breaking point for us.
I think it's Beach Hill Road. It's to the east.
I was talking about the wetland off of Watson.
Watson.
This one here.
Yeah,
On their
that's the
town
same
forest.
Yeah, because you've got a tower to either side of that wetland, right?
What's that?
You've got towers to either side of that wetland.
Yeah, I think we span it. Yeah.
Right, yeah, they're both up,
Yeah.
Pretty high.
Both lines.
yeah.
So it looks like your staging areas avoid the vernal pool, the delineated vernal pools, but are close at that Watson Road crossing. I know that's sort of a busy, there's a lot going on in that area, and I believe we talked about invasive species there last time. I haven't been out, other people probably in this commission have been more to that area. I don't park there personally.
I stay as far away from that as I can.
Busy.
It looks like you've done what you can to set yourself up to avoid wetland impacts. Like you said, you want to avoid impacts.
Yeah, it's a balance between, utilizing existing, trails that are there and, and also, minimizing and aiming for the narrow points of the wetlands, avoiding vernal pools.
Yeah, I think just a general statement, I think we've walked this, our team has walked this between myself and our construction folks, and then also a team of environmental people, and we've done our desktop review, considering the wetland delineations, the environmental resources that are out there, also trying to be respectful of the existing mountain biking trails and hiking trails that are out there, and trying not to build rows right down the middle of like single track mountain biking trails and things like that. So we've tried to identify crossing those trails more in a perpendicular fashion versus going right down, you know, a specific trail, so we're not impacting those trails. So we've tried to pay as much respect to the use of the town property and the recreators there as much as possible, while also trying to minimize our environmental impact. I think we got some good feedback from the folks that were involved in the prior project where we had built roads and did our restoration out there. That was done last year. So that's kind of mostly what you could expect from this project.
Well, you left that road, the base in place, and then just seeded the edges and ate over things.
Yeah, so what we had done is windrowed the topsoil.
Right.
What topsoil's there, it's not it's fairly sandy
rock,
there.
yeah.
Windrowed what was there, and we need to use a gravel base for the equipment that's
Right.
coming in. But then we would sort of recontour, spread that topsoil back over, seed and mulch.
Right.
Yeah.
But then you're going to use that base again.
Well, the base is, if and when you got to come back out here, the base is there, it's somewhat
That's right.
established, so it's value added for us, and I think it provides respreading that topsoil and that material, not only gives it sort of a substrate to quickly establish vegetation from an erosion control standpoint, but then it also gives a good substrate for future vegetation, so it kind of blends into the rest of the landscape over time. And that's fairly standard practice across our right-of-ways. It's where we restore access roads and work paths.
Yep.
This is off of Captain's Way you're talking about?
Yeah, Captain's Way and Watson Road, that whole town
Because
property area.
there's some more gravel. Is that what there was some areas where there was more gravel than there used to be? Is that right?
Yeah, there's,
Yeah.
and they put the matting down, but that, you pulled the matting out.
So we use the timber matting as a temporary impact mechanism, mostly through wetland areas, but in upland areas, we'll use gravel to establish a base for the equipment.
And I guess that's not what we're focused here on wetland impacts. I don't know, do we have any? Our main focus here is the wetland conditional use permit, but I guess we coordinate with you on other aspects of this project too. Kristen, do you have any comments?
I just had one question. I know it said decisions for upland or for timber matting were made based on the most recent, based on data available from NHB for turtles. And I'm kind of surprised that there isn't matting proposed between Watson and Captain's, because I know the Forest Ridge development as a whole, when that went in, there were quite a few surveys done within that sandy soil, and there were nesting blandings out there. So I was a little surprised that there wasn't more timber matting used. Do you know if the NHB data included turtle sightings through there?
We just got our recommended best management practices from Fish and Game yesterday. They're sort of hot off the press. And I can't remember how many there were. There were about 20, but a lot of their recommendations, they include the use of biological monitors in certain areas. The time of year restriction, I think, is their main mechanism to limit impacts to hibernating turtles. But part of it includes educating the contractors. There's several pages of notes at the end of the plans that will be updated to include flyers to help them understand which species are listed and protected, and then there'll be environmental monitors present to help move those out of the way.
I guess, yeah, I was thinking more using the addition of gravel changes the substrate that's available. So So that, sandy soil for nesting is no longer available.
Yeah, could I jump in?
Yeah.
So, turtle nesting is definitely part of their recommendation, and it's sort of, we get a fairly extensive write-up on all their BMPs, and turtle nesting is addressed as a concern, and then there's a blurb in there about how they're protected, and that we're required to avoid them and or report them when seen. I think a big part of the reason why we don't have specific temporary impact measures are things like, kind of like what you're alluding to, is that the time that we're scheduling our work is past that nesting season. And I'm sort of reading in between the lines here, because I don't think we ever got into this in our discussion with fishing game specifically, but I think that was a major part of why they didn't prescribe temporary impacts in those areas. And I guess another part of that is presumably we're going to be having access roads through those potential nesting areas, which is sort of a smaller impact with a 16-foot wide or 14-foot wide road through those areas. So it's sort of minimized to that degree. But we had fairly extensive discussions with Fish and Game. We do our NHB data check. That's sort of the cursory process, and then we get we give them some of our project information. They give us a sort of a long write-up of what their required BMPs are, and then we sort of have a conversation on how those meet our project and find ways to kind of go through meeting our objective, but also meeting their objective. And that part wasn't brought up. I guess all to say that a lot of things were brought up, but that wasn't one of their main concerns. Okay. What do you got first, Connor?
I know. You always look at me for this one. So just for the record, I'm going to have to recuse myself because I'm actually working on this project in Chester, Danville, and something else. Sandown. So I will advocate for, we've seen them in the past. They've done good work while they're here. I think we addressed, I'm not the Watson Road to Captain's Way personnel. I'm not the mountain biker or the trails guys on this. So their work in the past. I haven't been out to Captain's Way, but if we don't think it impacts, I think something we should look into, or that I just have some layup questions for you, are just some of the buffer impacts. So vernal pools. I see this note, but not on all of them. Are we restoring vernal pool buffers on this project?
Yeah. The work within the vernal pool buffers will be restored to pre-construction, conditions. If there was a trail there, there'll be a small trail left, but that came from Fish and Game's consultation with us.
I have a couple others. All this work done, you said, that time of year restriction, it's all on the east side of 101? 101 to what, Raynes?
I think there was.
I know it's hot off the press.
In the town of Exeter, right? For this consultation. Essentially, for the town of Exeter, it was from.
It's basically from 101 all the way to. I think it's basically.
It's the west side of Captain's Way.
Yeah, and we were able to work with them because there's some construction timing outage issues, and then the coordinating with the hay farmer at Raynes Farm. So they adjusted the area within which the time of year restriction was imposed. So it shrunk a little bit, but.
And then I might have missed it. What's the end of that time of year restriction? Just for
it's I think it was April 15th. Basically, they didn't want work April 15th to October 15th. So the presumption was that basically fall winter work was preferred. At which point the turtles would be would be hibernating, and they, any nest would have hatched.
And then I might have missed it. What's the end of that time of year restriction? Just for
April 15th to October 15th. So the presumption was that basically fall winter work was preferred. At which point the turtles would be, would be hibernating, and they, any nest would have hatched.
So this work, just to get in the schedule a little bit, and I don't know if that's what you're driving towards, Connor, but
You saw my way up there.
this work is scheduled to start in mid to late August, and because of it was originally planned to be done by December, but because of the time of year restriction imposed, with us not being able to start until October 15th for a fairly large portion of the project, that finish timeline is going to get pushed out probably into the January, February timeframe, which also isn't ideal for restoration, but that's kind of what we had to live with, because then we're also backstopped by the April 15th timeframe, so.
Would you come back out in the spring to reseed or?
Yeah, I mean, so just by way of permit conditions, we have an obligation to ensure that we have a certain amount % vegetated in our disturbed areas. So there'll be obviously an attempt during initial restoration to seed, and that's really just a dormant seed. And then Normando's contracted to do the monitoring during construction and post-construction. So that'll be part of their task to go out there and monitor all our work areas and to ensure that we have appropriate amount of germination and vegetation cover in our restored areas. So if it doesn't meet those needs, then we go back out there. We try to avoid having to get equipment out there. So we'll start with groundspeople with rakes and shovels and bags of seed, and we'll sort of step up from there as we need to.
Okay.
Good.
You good? Would, just back to Raynes, where there's work at the barn, would this, if the access is restricted for timber matting or any, would that impact work on the barn?
The repairs, no.
No, because
not
he's all
accessing.
access directly from, okay,
Right up by the barn is where he's entering.
okay. Okay. Do we want to go through the specific criteria? And then we can,
Fire away.
let me look, where is this? Too much. I can't seem to find it.
Good.
Okay, here we go. It's right in the beginning, that's why. So our criteria are that the proposed use is permitted in the underlying district. It is. No alternative design which does not impact a wetland or wetland buffer, or which has less detrimental impact on the wetland or wetland buffer is feasible. So I don't know that we've heard or thought of any alternative designs at this point. Seems like it's been thought through. Unless there's any other comments on that item. Item 3 is a wetland scientist has provided an impact evaluation that includes the functions and values of the wetland and assessment of potential project-related impacts, and concludes to the extent feasible, the proposed impact is not detrimental to the value and function of the wetlands or the greater hydrologic system. We haven't been through the functions and values, but tonight in this discussion, but you did provide that, I believe.
Yeah, we evaluated all the wetlands in the field for the functions and values, and the determination is based really on the fact that nearly all the impacts to wetlands themselves are temporary because of the matting. So in all the matted wetlands I've seen over the years, The mats are really effective. They're not in there for very long, and once they're removed, the vegetation bounces back, and there isn't a negative effect on the functional significance of a wetland that's been matted.
Okay. Item 4 is that the design, construction, and maintenance of the proposed use will, to the extent feasible, minimize detrimental impacts on the wetland or wetland buffer. Seems like there's a number of best management practices here that are in place to address those. 5 is that the proposed use will not create a hazard to individual or public health, safety, and welfare due to the loss of wetland, the contamination of groundwater, or other reasons. The only public safety issue is related to, I think you guys would make a commitment to coordinate with us regarding access. These are popular areas, so.
I already got an email from some woman.
Are you the person that
Yeah.
coordinates the mountain bike and stuff?
Yeah.
Dave? Yeah, so you've been in contact with Caitlin Griffin.
Yeah,
Does that name sound familiar?
month or so ago, maybe she's.
Yeah, and Serena's here. Serena, did you? She was here and she probably coordinated with you last year, and I think there was a pretty successful sign package deployed, redirecting
Yeah, it seemed to
trail
work.
users outside of our construction work area, so the same thing's expected to be done here, and that's kind of what we're planning on doing. I know we haven't had that specific conversation, but I think we primed it to happen in
Yeah.
the next coming months, so
Yep.
we're prepared to do all the same stuff.
Yeah, it was good, simple solution.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, and we'll get the word out. Did we advertise that, or was it just to put the signs up
Well, on the
on Fort Rock Riders?
social media, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'm good with that. If you are, Dave.
Yeah,
You're a point man?
Just gonna do the same thing,
Okay.
or same idea.
Yeah, we'll have to come up with some new ideas for the Watson Road side, but we're going in 4 spans there, so it shouldn't be too complicated, I don't think. And I'm happy to walk it with you. We'll have construction reps that can also walk it with you, and we can come up with a plan. You presumably know the trails better than any of us, so we would appreciate your input or somebody from, that you may know.
Yep.
That would be great.
Do you envision needing temporary closures of like the trails on the right of way while you're doing this work, just to?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a construction zone.
Right.
It's going to be heavy equipment, back and forth, trucks, back and forth, so, yep.
Oh,
So Dave can be the contact for that town forest, but Raynes Farm, we actually have a group called the Raynes Farm Stewardship Committee, sort of a subcommittee to this group. We can talk to them and just inform. I'm involved with that, but I think other members are not here. There's some other folks who aren't part of the Conservation Commission. So we should alert that group to this.
Yeah, I'll do that for sure.
Yeah, I think in the past, we nailed grade stakes and put construction fencing along the borders of the timber mat road.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Probably be a good use, for, like I said, we're sort of anticipating employing all the same
Yeah.
measures we did last time.
Okay, good. All right, we'll coordinate. Okay, item 6 doesn't really apply. Item 7, in cases where the proposed use is temporary or where construction activities disturbs areas adjacent to the immediate area, the applicant has included a restoration proposal revegetating any disturbed areas within the buffer with the goal to restore the site as nearly as possible to the original grade and conditions. So that has been proposed here. And the last one is related to other permits that they're going to obtain. So, do we want to make a motion or any other discussion on this? Okay. All right, I guess. We're not actually, you don't need us to do anything related to a state wetlands permit, because you work under your own permit by notification. So we're just doing, all right, I'm back, we're just doing the town conditional use permit. Do we want to add any recommendations to the planning board? I don't have any off the top of my head. Okay. I guess I'll move that we have no objection to the approval of this conditional use permit as proposed.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? None. Connor is abstained for the record.
Is that the word? I always say recused.
Well, he's recused himself.
I don't know what
You're
it is.
both. You're both. Abstaining is not voting. Recusing is not being part of a discussion, which I pulled you into slightly, but it's fine.
Left out. They were easy ones.
Since it's Connor, we'll entertain his questions.
Yeah, they were easy.
Yeah, I'll catch up with him later in the week.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All good.
So we're good. We didn't hit the gavel. You
That's what
passed.
we were waiting on.
Official. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So we'll draft a memo to the planning board. You're going before the planning board soon? You're on their docket?
I believe so.
Okay.
July.
Still July or?
Yeah, it's July.
Okay. All right, thanks, guys.
Good night.
Okay, so we are skipping item 3 on our agenda, and we will transition right into the shoreline conditional use permit for shoreline buffer impacts resulting from site improvements associated with a 3-unit condo conversion at 14 Hobart Street. 14 Hobart Street is, does anyone not know where Hobart Street is? It's off of 111.
Right at the bottom of that hill.
Okay, we will turn it over to
Alex Ross.
Alex Ross. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so real simple project we have here for you. I don't know if everyone's looked at their plans. I do have small copies if anyone needs some.
I have a copy online,
got it right here.
so I think we're good.
Okay. So a small site here along Little River. We are proposing improvements within the 250-foot setback from Little River. No impacts are proposed within the wetlands, and no impacts are proposed within 100 feet from the wetlands. But we are preparing a shoreline permit. The owner has already been to the ZBA just because of the configuration of the lot and what he wants to do. He was granted the necessary variances for that. So we're here before you tonight, and then we're also going to planning board for site review. On this site, there used to be a leach field with this house, but the owner has since tied into town sewer. So that's, of course, a smart thing to do in this area. One thing we're showing on our plan is there's a large impervious asphalt driveway. So we're going to remove that and install pervious asphalt So that's a big improvement for stormwater drainage. If you look at the contours, everything is sloped from Hobart Street to Little River. And along Little River, we did delineate the wetlands. I'm here with Mark Jacobs. He visited the site and flagged that all up. We surveyed it and showed that on the plan with all the setbacks. So pretty minor improvements as far as square footage, and the net result is better than it currently is because we're using pervious asphalt. So we'd be happy to go over anything on the plan or any questions you might have about wetlands or the site.
So you had to go through the ZBA, just
Yes.
for my own education, to take it from a one-family to a multifamily.
I believe so. I'm not sure if setbacks had something to do with that, because a lot of the structures don't meet the setbacks.
Right, I was noticing that proposed unit 3 is on I guess that's in the footprint of an existing
That's an
garage
existing garage currently, yes.
that's being converted to a housing unit,
Yeah.
and they're okay with that.
Yeah, and actually at ZBA, it was approved to do 4 units, or up to 4 units. The owner only wants to do 3. So.
Okay.
So we require condo conversions for 3 units or more are required to go to the ZBA for special exception.
And they're on town sewer and water.
Yes.
Yeah, I wondered about that. I saw the one sewer line going to unit 2, but I didn't, so all 3 units will be on town sewer.
That's correct.
Okay.
I guess I saw in here, you do have a whole maintenance specifications for the pervious asphalt.
Yes.
Do you have experience with it in residential settings? I guess I've seen it, obviously there's like the Lowe's parking lot in Greenland that always gets referenced as a pervious. Then there's other ones here and there at commercial parking lots, but I guess the application in residential settings, do you have experience with this?
We have used numerous sites and numerous smaller sites, compared to a Lowe's or a Target, a very big parking lot.
Yeah.
And it is effective.
And over time.
Well,
I guess you have control not to sand it and.
right. Yeah, I mean, like anything, it does require maintenance. So.
Yeah.
And I would definitely, because so much of its effectiveness relies on that maintenance, I would recommend you guys include a condition that the condo docs reference proper maintenance for the pervious pavers, for pavement. Mm-hmm. So that each homeowner is aware. Because it's good that it's on the plan, but we want the homeowners down the road to also continue to maintain it properly.
Yes.
What types of shrubs are proposed to be planted between Unit 1 and the property to the north? I can't remember if I'm in north arrow.
It's north. up? You just say,
It looks like there's a number of shrubs proposed, but I didn't see a call out for what.
Yeah, you're saying in between lot 89 and 88, that row that we've shown?
Yeah,
Yeah, the owner was just thinking of having some screening in there, but we can come up with a particular planting.
Well, I'm a big fan of the reduction of impervious surface. I think that for one is great. These are sitting on the same footprint.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Sorry if I cut you off there, but yeah, my only concern would be, but Kristen kind of stole my thunder there, was the maintenance of the pervious asphalt. It's always, I permit these things all the time too, and then I don't know if they're actually maintained or not, so.
Right. They're not maintained and they become impervious again, and then you're like, okay, well.
Well, I'm starting from scratch here,
Right.
so I think if we put that in, and if everyone's comfortable with that, then
just because it's in the HOA, I don't know how, does the HOA have to follow its own rules? I don't know. It seems sort of like a weak mechanism to enforce something like that. We don't have a lot of leverage.
I can't think of another way.
I can't think of another way either. It's not a town maintained.
We don't even have any inspection mechanism.
Yeah,
no,
right.
So,
no.
I mean, you can put it in there, but
Okay.
it's,
Makes
All
me
right.
feel better.
Why don't let's go through these conditional uses for the shoreline protection district. And then, and Valerie, if you have any questions,
Yep,
speak up.
I will.
So I'm on page 106 of this, but I'll read these different, this is the statute that governs that the planning board can grant these conditional use permits within the shoreland district. This is considered the shoreland district, even though it's Little River, because the Little River drains to the Exeter River, and the Exeter River drains to the Swampscott. So it's, the shoreland includes tributaries, the major tributaries in our town. And so even though there's no wetland buffers, that's why we're here to review. And we just make recommendations to the planning board. And as part of the planning board review, they'll ultimately issue this along with their other building permit. Sort of my framework of how this works. Is that accurate, Kristen?
Yeah.
Good enough, okay.
Strive for it.
Okay, so the first criteria is that the proposed use will not detrimentally affect surface water quality of the adjacent river or otherwise result in unhealthful conditions. If there was a septic going in or something like that, I would be more concerned about that, but the fact this is sewered, I don't see an impact to surface water quality. I would encourage that the buffers that are there are maintained, which it looks like they will be. The proposed use will discharge no wastewater on site other than normally discharged by domestic wastewater disposal systems and will not involve on-site storage or disposal of hazardous or toxic waste as herein defined. Again, there's no septic on site, so that's addressing that issue. I don't see any other discharges that would be part of this. The proposed use will not result in undue damage to spawning grounds or other wildlife habitat. The proposed use complies with the use regulations identified in Article 934 Exeter Shoreline Protection District Ordinance, use regulations, and all other applicable sections of this article. I'm not sure exactly, what is that reference to?
Let me go to my book, sorry.
I'm, off the top of my head, I don't remember, but we can look into that. We're gonna dot the i's and cross our t's here. And then the last one is we'll come back to D, but item E is the design and construction of the proposed use will be consistent with the intent of the purposes set forth in the Shoreline Protection District Ordinance. I see that this does meet the intent. I certainly think infill development like this is preferable to Exeter rather than development of new lots.
Agreed.
So were you asking about D, Drew?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's all the other
I guess
regulations?
it's all the other.
Yeah, it's all the other regulations.
Protect and promote public health, A, B, C, D, E.
So impervious restrictions, feedlots, all of those regulations that are listed in the,
In G, in
shoreline.
934, okay. That are not part of this.
storage of road salt, all of that.
Okay, does anyone want to make a motion on this one? We have the memo to help us. So,
Connor can make the motion. It'll make up for him not being able to participate in the last one.
I'm trying to find this little memo. That's my cheat sheet
it's
here.
probably page 3.
And is this Hobart Street? Yeah.
Hobart.
I make a motion that we receive this application. Nope. And have no objection to the approval of the conditional use permit. Do we have to write a letter for this as well? Or is this?
Do we want to add, though, we wanted to add that one condition.
Yeah, and
The maintenance.
got it. With the condition that we add,
They add to their condo
Perfect.
The
documents. The main-
maintenance instructions for pervious pavement and a reference to the limitations of the use of fertilizer in accordance to zoning ordinance 9.3.4 F12.
9.3.4 F12.
Okay,
That's good.
so we didn't discuss it. Wait, hold on, it has to be, we have a convoluted, but I think it's there. Someone want to second it?
Sure.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so we didn't discuss it, but we'll discuss the limitations on the use of fertilizer on the property as it can result in a discharge to nutrients to the little river.
Well, wouldn't the property already fall under that?
I would think that it would.
Yeah, but,
'Cause
so it's
it's in the
including the
zone,
mention
isn't it?
of those two items in the condo docs. Because
Oh,
those are,
Just to reinforce it.
yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna draft that letter. Any other discussion? Okay, we will vote. All those in favor? Motion?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for coming in tonight. when is this, do you have other, I guess you have to go to planning board in July, probably.
I think there's a TRC next week.
Okay, you have TRC.
Yeah, because we want to go over how the sewer line or water line would be best coming in.
Connected to the different units. Fair enough. Good luck with that.
Yes.
Okay. We made it through our,
Raynes Repair.
Raynes Repair progress updates.
Kristen?
Do you want to talk about Raynes?
Sure. So your packet, the memo in your packet had a list of the repairs. I thought it would be helpful to be more specific other than repairs are ongoing, just to kind of give you a sense for where we are in terms of the project. If you've driven past there, you'll see the scaffolding is up and they're working on the siding on the south side of the barn right now. The windows have not yet been installed, but they were able to repair the majority of the windows, with the exception of 2, which I was really surprised about and pleased about, because we had thought that there would be more substantial work needed to them. The foundation, I don't know, do you want me to step through this or not?
The work is ongoing and progressing well.
Yes. And the specifics of the work that's being completed are in the memo for the meeting and available online for those people who aren't here. The next kind of major milestone is at the halfway mark. We need to document the repair, photo document the repairs and provide information to LCHIP, and then have a site visit with them before they release the second payment. So I'm kind of prepping all the paperwork for that now. And that's all I have.
It was a good update.
It's a good update. I keep not getting out there. I gotta go out there and check it out.
There was, I think they did I think it was in the, maybe it's not out yet, but we did some filming on the bi-weekly report with Exeter TV.
Okay.
Made me speak on camera again and talk about the project.
I haven't seen that one. I did watch one of those recently.
Yeah.
They're good.
Yeah, it's exciting to see it come together.
We're still looking at other funding sources.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna make the Moose Plate deadline, unfortunately, so Valerie was fantastic. She went through, I don't know if you want to talk about the grant research that you've done, Valerie?
Yeah, well, we're just trying to find some grants for various projects, and there are a couple that look kind of promising. I don't want to over-promise, but there are a couple that looked kind of good, so anyway, we're coordinating on that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. It's quieter all of a sudden.
Bag wrinkle for the past.
So,
How many engineers does it take?
That's it.
That's all I could think of.
So, yeah, I guess I don't know how to help with the funding. So yeah, that's awesome. I'm supportive of more. We can finish off Raynes. Maybe
Yes.
maybe we should have a Raynes, do we need a stewardship committee meeting? Might be worth,
Okay.
or Valerie at least could talk about those options to the committee, and we could do it over email too. I don't know.
At this point, we're doing email inquiries to the various foundations, and so then we'll see what we hear back.
Okay.
And if they're positive, then we can do the next step forward, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that sounds like we could.
Yeah.
And I did submit a CIP request again this year for town portion, because there's no source of funding that's going to cover it all, I'm sure.
Right.
And I wanted to be sure that at least had a placeholder in there.
Okay. You submitted, we're already doing those for
Yes.
the next budget
Yes.
cycle
Yes.
for 2024, because that gets discussed this summer.
Right.
All right. Excellent. Okay, next we're gonna do some mowing at the Stone property. Because he just went out last year.
Right, right. We had him go out and do an assessment for what it would take to return the field, you know, to return the field to more of a meadow situation rather than a brushy meadow. And so his recommendation were 2 cuts, this one in the summer and one in the fall.
Or did he do a cut last year though?
Yep.
Yeah, he did a cut
Yep.
last year, but then we need to be aggressive because of it's gonna send up all the stump sprouts and
That's-
water spouts or whatever that are gonna come up right now. So if we waited again to the fall, just to do 1 cut, that wouldn't be sufficient.
Right.
So
Just-
that,
For background on that, is that for birding? I mean, is that for bird habitat or?
why do we wanna maintain a meadow?
Yeah.
It's a good question. Birds are one of the,
Okay.
it provides, and someone else could jump in here, but the meadow, there's not a lot of, we have a lot of forest, but the meadow habitat provides more diverse habitat for wildlife, specifically birds, ground meadow nesting birds. Which is why we usually delay cutting too at certain locations to allow enough time for the ground nesting birds to nest and raise their young and move on.
Right.
But July is about as good as we can do.
Right. So we typically, after July 15th is what we would, it is what would be, I wouldn't say ideal, but kind of like the recommended threshold. But we may or may not make that. We need to schedule it around David's availability, and we don't really have another contractor who can do the cutting. And so I don't know what his schedule is. I'm sure he'll try to target after July 15th. But it's important that we get it cut, and it's just 1 year, and then future years we won't need to do that kind of repetitive cutting.
And I think I was by there, and it's not, we had like some beaver activity. There was always backed up water at one point, right?
Yeah.
It was sort of mysterious what was going on. It was very wet out there, but it's okay right now, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, there is a beaver dam if you walk into the woods from straight back to the woods from the road, there is a large beaver dam there, and it kind of floods that back edge of the field, and a little bit on the east side.
Okay. And this is a property, the Stone, I don't know if you know where it is, but it's off Powder Mill.
Right, it's right
by
across
the-
from Ward Barn. Is that it? No.
Oh, that's
No.
Raynes.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, that's
That's
Raynes.
Raynes.
Sorry.
This is another, we
Okay.
shifted to the Stone property.
Okay, sorry.
Which is on the other side of town. Do you know Powder Mill, which is off of 111?
No.
Towards Apalanis, that area there.
Okay. Ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
Kind of River Woods area.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Across from
All right.
River Woods, kind of.
Okay, sure.
We can point it out, but it's just a field that the town owns, and it's adjacent to, there's a few houses in that area, but it's pretty spread out.
And so there's sort of a handshake agreement with a family to hay that property for us, because cutting hay is really expensive. It's great to have this habitat diversity, but it's expensive to do. When we acquired the property, there was a handshake agreement to allow the Stone family to continue to hay the property to use to feed their sheep. But because of the beaver activity and flooding of the field, they hadn't gotten out there as often. And so we had a lot of shrubby, woody growth happening. So last year, we had someone go out and walk the property and, kind of document what we need to do to intervene and bring it back to a grassland meadow.
Okay.
Okay.
So because that mowing cost is over and above what we have as a line item for our town allocated budget, I am requesting you consider conservation funds for payment of the double cut out there. And it would be $19.50
Didn't we
total.
approve that a few meetings ago? A lump sum around that amount for mowing? Or was that a different property?
I
thought I remember reading that in the minutes. So you need a motion to approve the expenditure of 900. I'll make a motion to approve the expenditure of $975 in July and $975 in September out of the conservation funds for the stone property mowing.
Second.
Okay. I guess we'll vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? None? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. We will get on that. You're going to coordinate with Dave.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, we have a few more items, report outs, trails. Kyle and Kristen, you did the June 3rd,
Yes, we did.
the high school trail maintenance day.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the trails around that area.
Well, they weren't really trails anymore until we got there. Do you want to? Well, we had a group of, I guess, 6 people went through, and they had the high school teacher that was there. I don't remember his name. Do you?
Mr. Brock.
Yeah, they were interested in reclaiming a trail network that went around. If you go into the high school driveway and you kind of bear right, like you're going to go around the school, there's a pond right there on your right that you can see. And so this trail basically does kind of like a sort of a horseshoe around the pond, and it goes deeper into the woods than that. But it hadn't been maintained in a while. There was, we did a lot of brush cutting. There was one large tree that had kind of, the root barrel had uprooted and right in the middle of the trail, and it was blocking the trail. And it was a lot of poison ivy all around it, and that was kind of a deterrent to us getting rid of that tree. And so the way we kind of left it was that maybe we would look at doing that in the winter. Otherwise you basically have to walk through shin deep poison ivy to connect the trail. So as it is, they can come in from either end. We kind of went in as far as we could until we got to the area where this tree was. And I guess that pond itself has been kind of, muskrats have created a breach in it, and so there's some water leaking out of it, so I don't know.
Yeah, I have it on my list of stuff to follow up on, but we'll look into.
That's this thing south of the high school? This?
Yep.
It's leaking out
It's leaking
onto the parking lot?
No, it's going the parking lot is
way.
higher. It goes down.
Okay, because
down
they
this way towards this wetlands here.
Okay. Yeah, because there was a lot of wetland impacts to build the high school. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so that's sort of a part of the stormwater management system, and if it's not functioning the way it was designed.
And so
We need to
the trail
follow.
kind of crossed some pretty muddy areas that would probably be best suited to have a bridge over at this point, so.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was good to make the connection with the teacher at the high school who sort of runs the environmental club. It wasn't as many students as we hoped. Only one student came out and her family. But it happened to be on the day that most of them were taking the SATs, so it was kind of rough timing. But we did also have volunteers from the energy committee, so that was nice. I feel like it was we made some progress out there, and a connection that I think is an important one to make.
Excellent. Good work. The other outreach event I was thinking about since our last meeting, we had the Alewife Festival,
Oh,
because that was just after our last May meeting. This was one of those 5-week meetings that feels like it was a long time ago we last had our meeting. So we had a successful Alewife Fest. Although I was only there for half of it, so I shouldn't say anything, but it seemed like it went well.
yeah, I think so. And I sent out a follow-up survey and got some good feedback about the event moving forward. Some recommendations that we could consider. One was to kind of start the planning earlier, and so that other entities could get involved. I think that's a good recommendation. I don't know. So I thought it was good. I thought we talked about it last month, though. Maybe we did.
Did we?
I don't know.
We did.
I was very confused.
Well, we certainly talked about it, but I think it was right before it happened.
Yeah, you're right.
It's been 5
Yeah.
weeks.
Wow, what a long month it's been.
It's been a long month. It's one of those,
Well, the first fell on a Wednesday
Yeah.
this month, didn't it?
I don't know.
Or a Thursday, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so decent turnout. I think we're still challenged with how to get the word out and how to draw more traffic. Trevor, you had a great idea for the Conservation Commission's display next year with the oysters.
Oh, yeah, right. I'm glad someone remembered
You
that.
want to talk about that? I think it's a great idea.
Oh, sure. I feel that, like, people seem to be drawn to, I don't know, things that I can actually see. Like, for instance, they come by our table and then Drew does a great job of showing like the groundwater model. And just like a little exhibit that I've done before that I thought would be neat for folks to see would be you take 2 fish tanks and you fill them with water and you mix dirt into them and you're taking a bag of oysters and you dunk them into one of the tanks. And the oysters will actively filter the water out, and after 30 minutes or so, you can start seeing the difference in the water clarity from one tank to the other. Just going to show, the importance of these habitats have on our estuaries and our river systems and that. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they filtered that much.
Oh yeah, an adult oyster will filter 50 gallons of water a day.
Wow.
Holy cow.
It's like you've had that fact just ready to go.
I go to bed saying that fact.
50 gallons. 50 gallons.
Keeps me going.
and people eat them. I'm allergic to shellfish, so I don't eat them.
But I thought it was really good. We had a lot of participation from the different volunteer boards. That was really helpful. I'm super thankful for everything that folks contributed. We have the Alewife Festival sign now, the banner that Sarah, Drew's wife, initiated the live art event for. And so I'd like to get that put up at the library, maybe in the children's room or something like that in the interim for the off-season, and then we could use it next year, because it just doesn't make sense for it to just sit in my cubicle, so. But, yeah, I thought it was a really, another good event. I enjoyed it.
And now that, we've had State of Our Story, so I can actually report publicly, the alewife returns in the Exeter River over the last few years have just exploded and have dwarfed every other return here in our estuarine system. We had I think it was 150,000 in 2021, if I'm remembering correctly, and then in 2022 we doubled that. So they've just been, and that was from basically nothing. So they've come since the dam has come out. Those returns have come back in a just a huge way. And again, Exeter is now holding the lion's share of alewife returns throughout most of the tributaries of Great Bay. So very, very cool stuff.
It's almost daily on the Exeter Town Facebook page. There's this guy who's been taking amazing wildlife photos, and he's got pictures of the action photos of eagles and blue herons and just 2 alewives at a time, and it's pretty amazing.
Wasn't there a mink or something like that, or an otter that caught one?
Yeah, and
Swimming with it kind of above the water.
That's cool.
and I think they've named the seal that's been hanging out down there Rupert.
Yeah.
So he seems, looking at the pictures, he's enjoying the alewives very much.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, he seems well fed.
Yeah.
Ginny did have a good idea. She had proposed it for the Alewife Festival, but I think it would be a great way to initiate reopening the barn to the public, where we invite some of these, local photographers to come and display some of their work related to, dam river restoration or conservation lands, or some sort of theme around, Exeter's wild nature.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So, food for thought, moving forward.
So do we want to pick a date? No, not right now. For next year?
Yeah, let's do that next month.
Next month?
I hadn't really thought about that yet.
Well,
but that's a good idea.
Yeah, we should either pick a date and send it out to folks, or have a follow-up meeting at some point. Really put a date on the calendar to start thinking about it again.
Because that was actually one of the points that was too bad about when we had it, was we just missed the return, right? We missed about a week or so.
Yeah, there was
2
a
weeks.
lull, and just, I think it was last week, they came out, there were massive amounts of
Again.
alewife
Oh, really?
again.
Huh.
And so I think,
All right.
yeah.
Yeah,
Our timing
and-
was good,
Yeah.
but then conditions changed with the weather, so
Yeah.
it seemed like numbers died back, and then there was a second flush, or I don't
And
know what you'd
no
call
one
it.
told the fish, so it was an
Right.
advertising problem.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think if we could, we're not going to nail it every year, I guess, because
Right.
it's so sporadic.
But I was working with Bob Glowacki. He's very interested, and I think this would be fantastic in installing an underwater camera just at String Bridge, so that you can have that displayed in the library as some sort of interactive display. But we could also pull it up for events. Kyle had agreed to walk folks down to String Bridge to the viewing site, but because there really wasn't much to view, we kind of abandoned that during the day. But I think it's just such an incredible event, and people seem to really talk about it all the time. You do see it on the Facebook page in town, and so I think capitalizing on that energy is good. We should continue to do it. So so next year it would probably either be the 11th or the 18th. 2 potential dates, if it were to remain on a Saturday. But yeah, let's talk about that more officially next
Yeah.
meeting, so that we can look into what other events might be occurring around then. So we don't have conflicts.
Sounds good.
And let the alewives know.
Right.
Yeah, this time.
While
They
they're
need
here.
advanced planning.
Right.
Okay, any other outreach events on our schedule coming up? Should we have anything?
So I did a walk with Parks and Rec, I guess a couple weeks ago now. They do these Tuesday walks, midday, and we went to the McDonald property. We had quite a few people come out for that. It was I want to say there were 15 people who came, including 2 women who are the daughters of the original owner of the McDonald property when it was granted to the town. It was just fantastic to connect with them and kind of hear a little bit about the history and their stories there. So there is an opportunity to reconnect through that. Or another thing we tend to do is a fall paddle or a summer paddle, something to think about. But I don't think we have any concrete plans at this point to do anything unless folks want to push for something.
Does anyone want to plan anything? Okay. If we get motivated, feel free. So yeah, if there's ever any hike or paddle or any event really, we can self-organize. Just for Valerie's reference, we do a variety of things throughout the year, but it really is up to commission members to be motivated to do something. So certainly if we're happy to help advertise something, try and encourage people to get out on different trails besides the town forest, things like that. All right, so it is a busy time though, so this maybe isn't the best outreach opportunity. I know we all go places in the summer. Any other committee reports or things? Let's skip that. Okay.
Well, I guess real quick, I'll just mention that River Study, the last one, VHB came and presented for a number of the initial alternatives for the Pickpocket Dam study that's going forward, including, let's see, pull up those minutes. Increasing, so they basically looked at the amount of water flowing through, that it's a high risk dam, I believe it's classified as, and how you'd be able to pass a certain amount of water of the, past the 100-year storm through this structure, and whether that, so one alternative was like raising the abutment, one was creating another abutment, and the third one I think that we're looking at that they presented some on was actual removal. This is very preliminary, just showing some of the, some of their findings and showing where they were in the process, but just to let them know, that this is ongoing and we'll hear more about it. But there are some alternatives out there, so.
To maintain the dam versus removal.
Well,
so it's not a structural deficiency per se. You're saying the main issue that's causing it to be a high hazard dam is the flow, its ability to handle flow.
So the State Dam Safety Bureau has requirements for what level storm event a structure needs to be able to retain for it to meet safety standards. And there's parts of this dam that would be breached under certain storm conditions. And so in order to fix it, you either have to remove the dam or come up with some sort of modification in order to meet that safety.
So you're saying if the river floods a certain level behind it, it's going to start going around the dam over on the earthen banks, the natural around it. And
then a risk level is basically assessed by if there was a catastrophic failure, what is affected downstream.
And there are houses.
In this case, there's there's properties, there's houses, there's So even if there were, so one of the alternatives, for instance, that was put in there was like, well, the town might be able to just buy up everything in its path, but it was just not very feasible, or those lines.
Okay. Cool. And so that was a recent meeting, and is that VHB would be in the packet? Do they post those on our?
Yep. I don't know if the packets are posted, but the videos are. So you could watch the presentation.
Cool. Okay. Up next, we're going to approve minutes. Although we have a few other things to talk about, so we're not quite out of the woods, guys. Don't get too comfortable over here. Apparently, we do have to approve the January minutes. We didn't do that last time. I don't know why we've had such trouble with minutes. But I will motion that we approve the January 2023 minutes.
Second.
If you were not here, you don't need to vote. I don't think there's anything stopping you from voting, though.
I think I'll probably abstain.
Okay. All right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, those pass. The May minutes, we already did at the last meeting, per the May minutes, we did approve the February one, so I'm skipping that. We're gonna go to May. Does anyone have any comments on those minutes? They look good to me. I read them. I did read them.
I wasn't here for May, but if Jones and Beach was here, Gier is spelled G-I-E-R. So I see it throughout here, G-E-I-E-R. I don't know if that's a big
Okay,
issue.
that's
just-
worth fixing.
Just a name, nothing crazy.
Okay, good. They were here. I can confirm that. I want to say it's Gier. I always wanted to say Geyer, but it's Gier.
Who
Oh,
knows?
Barry Geyer? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's how he says it too.
His wife says it Gier,
Oh, okay.
but she's Zarda Gier, so it's all, who knows? Geyer is fine,
Okay,
but it's G-I-E-R.
okay. I guess I will motion that we approve the May minutes with that amendment. All those in favor, say, well, actually it has to be seconded. Does anyone want to second my motion?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? None. That passes unanimously. Okay. Correspondence. I was going to mention in our correspondence that he's not here tonight, but I'll just mention it. We can mention it maybe next meeting again when Don is back. But
Yeah, Don's
our very own Don Clement was recently honored with an award at the Gulf of Maine Council for his outstanding, as an outstanding volunteer. So it's the Longard Volunteer Award. So every year, one person within the Gulf of Maine, which the Gulf of Maine, that includes, obviously it includes Maine and up into Atlantic Canada,
Yeah.
Yeah.
in Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. He was awarded for his longtime contributions with the Exeter Swampscott River Local Advisory Committee. He's been involved in that. Back to the early days of the Alewife Festival, the dam removal, many other projects. So we want to recognize Don and all he's done in the town, volunteer, but also on the local river advisory committee. So if we have anything, I don't know if we could do anything for Don related to this, but it's a pretty exciting. And
deal, yeah.
Pete Richardson also got the same award. That's what that was a number of years ago. But Pete was another important volunteer in our town. So very cool. And there's a nice tribute to him on the webpage. If you haven't seen that, there's a whole article and I think some links to other things related to it. So check that out. And the other thing was the wetland rule change. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So DES had initiated, I guess, legal review of their wetland regulations, and through that process, they identified a few necessary amendments, as well as some additional changes that DES feels are appropriate. So those proposed amended rules are available for public comment through July 10th, which is a Friday. But since that happens, the deadline ends before our next meeting, we thought maybe it would be it would be a good idea to consider whether this board is interested in sending a comment letter into the rules. So a couple things that they're proposing for changes that I think would be of interest to this group is currently when a wetland impact application reaches a certain threshold, they're required to mitigate for those impacts. And the first step for that is to approach the local entity to see if there's any list of local mitigation projects that entity would rather have the applicant address. And then if there is no local mitigation, then they go into the in lieu fee process, which is basically writing a check that's calculated based on the square foot of impact. So under the new rules, the first step will be to go straight to the in lieu fee, which is a substantial change. It kind of takes that local control out of the process. Another provision that's being changed is there right now, what the wetland applications say when the applicant signs, that's giving automatic permission for conservation commissions to come onto the property to inspect the site. They found that wasn't appropriate. They don't have the legal authority to include that in their forms, so they're eliminating that. There's some changes to docking structures, but we don't really deal with that much. And then the other change was related to the permit by notification process.
What about the inspection? I thought there was an allowance, said there was an allowance in there saying basically that you had to make an appointment. You couldn't just show up. Isn't that what it said?
I don't know.
I just read it quickly and I thought I caught that.
Yeah, I don't know.
There still has to be the ability to walk the property.
Right, and you always can, before you take action on a wetland application, you can request a site walk. We tend to try to coordinate those. I try to guess which properties you might want a site walk for beforehand, and so sometimes we'll book them in advance, but generally it's associated with more complicated projects or projects that have some strange nuance about it. But yeah, so you still would have the ability to go onto the property. It's just not an automatic allowance.
Right. And we always prearranged it anyway.
We do.
Yeah.
And, the permit by notification. So there is also a change now that within 10 days of receipt or where a written waiver of intervention from a conservation commission or the local advisory committee. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not reading this correct. Somehow, my understanding of this change is, so when they submit the expedited permit review or permit by notification, if the Conservation Commission doesn't choose to sign the wetland application within that 10-day period, I don't know. Connor, what do you know what I'm talking about?
That's it. Yeah, so if you don't get signed off by the Conservation Commission, it goes to
the longer review.
I think it's 25 days now.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. And so one thing about that I thought is other conservation commissions have a process identified in advance where someone or a couple people on the board is authorized to review these applications outside of the meeting and sign or not sign to try to push through those projects that really have minimal impacts. And so that amendment kind of made me think it might be worth for this board to consider adopting some sort of process. So if you're interested in that, I could kind of pull some information from other towns that do that and bring that to the next meeting. But for this issue, I know NHACC is submitting comments on behalf of all commissions, but if you feel you want Exeter to provide specific comments, we could vote tonight to authorize someone, probably Drew and I, to work together to submit a letter on your behalf. But we don't have to.
The only one that really would concern me at all, and maybe I've missed this in the past, how is it the in lieu fee calculated?
So there's a formula, and I don't have the formula in my head, but it's like,
So
He does.
is there some,
you do?
I said nobody does.
Oh, okay.
It's some Excel sheet.
Yeah.
so is it something that's, it's mandated by the state, this is the schedule you're going to follow?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's, yeah, that is a major loss of control then.
Right, and add to that, Trevor and I were in the roundtable, which I don't think we talked about at the last meeting, but the ARM fund is where all of that in lieu payment goes to, and then you can apply for a grant application to use that funds for whatever project. DES has also said that right now their priority is not land acquisition, but will be restoration. And so those two are kind of like a double whammy, in my opinion. First, it takes the local control over identifying projects locally for mitigation. And then secondly, it puts the burden of, assisting with the no net loss of wetlands on communities to do restoration projects, which are highly complicated, very long-lived, very expensive. And so, that to me is the most concerning. I feel like the other things we kind of have our own workarounds for, but.
Yeah, that would be,
That's a policy, not a rule. What you're saying is that they communicated something about how they're deciding to award. But
Yeah,
that's not
I think it's how
that's not a
they'll.
specific rule.
Right, I think it's how they'll structure the
ranking.
grant ranking, or project ranking through the grant process.
So we could comment on that, but that's separate from the official rule comments.
comment on the change from mitigation to in lieu, the order.
But we could comment on that, yeah. Okay, I think we should do that. I'll motion that we craft a comment letter to the NHACC,
To DES.
to DES.
I'll second the motion that Drew and Kristen will draft a letter.
I'm tired.
I didn't say right now.
I would like input from others. I'm not an expert in.
Well,
I can certainly put my name on it, but if there's,
why don't you be the point man, just and enlist the consultants,
okay.
the two sitting here that have the most knowledge.
How do we get to do that in a kosher way?
So it's not a quorum, so it's not a meeting.
Okay, all right.
Whatever this letter we're crafting needs to reflect what this board discussed in terms of their concerns.
Got it.
And and the motion you made states that. So I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any other discussion on that?
When is that official? July?
Oh, the deadline?
July
10th.
Okay.
So that's when the comment period ends on the rules. Okay. So I will, let's vote unless there's any other comments. All those in favor of sending a letter, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. We'll draft a letter to DES on those rule changes. Okay, any other business?
Oh, yeah, so there was another application
Yeah.
before you, but they asked it be tabled. And I'll just provide you a copy of the letter.
So are they continuing it?
Yeah,
Yeah, we share.
sorry. Here.
It's fine, we're fine, don't worry.
But
No sharing.
basically, the applicant had, the property owner had wetlands delineated. They went through the zoning board to do, for their septic, because their septic didn't meet standards. And then it went to planning board for subdivision. That subdivision created a 20-foot wide access way from the main property to the newly subdivided property. And so they had filed an application with us, but they showed that access coming straight off of, this is for 24 Powder Mill Road, coming straight off of 24 Powder Mill Road. And I said, I can't imagine the commission would approve that because that's not the least impactful alternative. You'll need a conditional use permit. You know, we need to talk about this. We met on site. The wetland scientist apparently took over for Luke Hurley, who's no longer with Gove, and was relying on the wetland delineation done by Luke in his wetland app, in this new wetland scientist application. And when he went and heard my comments, he went back out and found, oh, there actually is a wetland within that 20-foot wide access easement, so really their proposal is the least impactful alternative. And so I said, we're gonna need a wetland delineation, like we need to know that we're acting on something that's accurate. And I've also suggested that we have a site walk, so the July meeting at 5 o'clock, we're proposing a site walk to this property. I think it's important that you see the property and you know, obtain whatever information you need to feel that the wetland delineation is accurate. So he submitted this letter that I just passed out to you all, basically asking for this to be tabled until July. And then they'll come to you with the wetland application plus the conditional use permit. They did send this letter also to the state because he had already filed with the state. So Evan Lewis is aware of it, and so is the ERLAC, Exeter Squamscott Local Advisory Committee, because they needed to review the application as well. So more to come on that.
Okay, thank you for that update. We can go check out the stone property across the street.
Yeah.
Afterwards. That sounds good. So we'll coordinate on a site meeting maybe that same day, but ahead of the meeting.
Yeah, if you guys are okay with that, 5 or 5:30, I don't, it could be whatever, they're flexible.
Okay, that works for me. And we may have another application or two.
Yes,
So things
there's
are
at least
picking
two.
up. We deflected another one, didn't we? That was a
Yes,
conceptual discussion. I have we may want to talk about that at another time, these conceptual discussions.
Okay.
Mixed emotions on that concept.
And then there's already a submission for a wetland application too. So, and our deadline's way down the road. So, might be busy.
All right, good stuff. All right, so that's the 11th, July 11th. Come quick.
Make that a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
You beat me to it. Second.
All right, all those in favor?
At 8:54.
8:54, made it. We are adjourned. Thank you, Bill.
Okay,
Bye.
see ya.